Recovery Ecosystem Podcast is an initiative of Detroit Recovery Project, Incorporated. Our mission is to support sustained recovery, health, and wellness.
Hello, we'd like to welcome you to the Recovery Ecosystem Podcast. And the host today is none other than author, CEO of the Detroit Recovery Project, and clinical psychologist, Dr. Andre Johnson.
Thank you. The Recovery Ecosystem, a holistic approach to recovery. I am so excited to have you all here today. My fellow co-host, Mr. He's also a book author. Self-Awareness is the name of his book. He's a person in long-term recovery. He's a certified peer specialist and a long-time leader in the recovery community, also known as DJ Robert Chacon.
Hello, everyone.
And to my right, I also have a illustrious young lady who has just all kinds of leadership skills. She's done work in drug policy area. She currently works for the Reason Foundation. She's done clinical and social research. Without further ado, I would also introduce Miss Layao Boo Harfouch.
Thank you.
Yes, we're so excited to have you here today.
So happy to be here. Thank you. And I also have the privilege of introducing our guest for this episode on healthy friendships, Allison Goreen, who is a behavioral health specialist at the Overdose Prevention Engagement Network. And is a licensed clinical social worker and also a person in recovery from heroin addiction.
So we've been flirting and talking about the importance of the recovery ecosystem, both on a local, national, international level, and how many different components fall up under the recovery ecosystem. And so today we're going to focus our conversation around one of the areas that we know is important called healthy friendships.
Absolutely.
I was thinking about that particular topic because of the experience that led me to authoring the book, The Recovery Ecosystem. So let me just give you a little backstory.
Come on.
2017, I was flying to South Carolina. I had a 7 a.m. flight. And I don't know about y'all, but every time I get to the gate, I got to see how big the airplane is. And it was one of those little small, like charter planes.
Too?
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
100%.
I was the only one.
Yes. When you're 6'4" and 280 pounds, you want to know what kind of seat you're going. You want to know who you're sitting next to. And so they got the charter plane for almost a 3-hour flight. And I'm irritated. Because I haven't had my morning coffee. I had to wake up at 5:30 in the morning to get to the airport. And then when I get to the airport to see the small plane and get seated on the plane, and I got a window seat. I prefer an aisle seat. Window seats are painful for me, my knees. And not only do I get a window seat, but this big 300-plus black man sit right next to me. And we're the only two black men on the airplane. And he has dreadlocks. And he's like, so I'm in the airplane squished. About an hour and a half go by. I got to use the bathroom. I hate asking people to go to the bathroom. And I can't even stand up perpendicular on this airplane. So long story short, hour and a half go by. The young man goes to the bathroom. And when he exits the bathroom, he's spraying the outside of the bathroom with air freshener. Never seen nothing like this in my life.
Wow.
And I am like mortified just looking at this. You hear me?
What a situation.
Oh, it was so, and I got attitude with this young man. Like, what's going on? Long story short, I go use the restroom. I return to my seat and I kindly introduce myself to him. And he has this very thick Southern accent. But the bottom line was he had just got released from prison because of President Barack Obama changed the laws to release nonviolent offenders at the time. He had served 10 years in prison. He was roughly maybe early 30s, and he was just ecstatic because he got released 10 years earlier than he anticipated. And he began to kind of tell me about his background. He was like, I had another brother in prison. He's not going to be released. He got another 20 years. I had another brother I lost to the streets. And he was just telling me how deeply he was entrenched in the life of dealing and selling drugs, and how true he was to that game. And so I began to talk and ask him, what's some of the first things you want to do? He said, "Boko moko." I said, "Excuse me, can you repeat that?" And he said, "Boko moko." I said, "I'm sorry, but I can't really hear you." And he said, "Boko moko." So I finally figured out the first thing he wanted to do after exiting jail was getting a pedicure and a manicure.
Wow.
So I was like, isn't that cool? And he was talking about the joy his mother was and how his mother was crying the night before on the phone, that she was so happy to be able to get the chance to see one of her sons. And so fast forward, we get off the plane at 10 o'clock roughly that morning. Later that evening at 7 o'clock, I'm at the mall. Well, when I exit the plane, let me just back up. When I exit the plane, I see three homeboys with white T-shirts, dark sunglasses, gold chains drip, and it's 10 a.m. And I'm like, damn.
What city was this?
This was Charleston.
Charleston, okay.
Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay.
So I'm like, ugh. So I remember walking past them, and me and him were the only two black men on the plane, so I was able to know that they was waiting on him. And fast forward that evening, I'm at the mall. There he is with his three homeboys. He still is wearing his prison uniform. He still is wearing his prison sandals. His eyes were completely bloodshot red, and he had not made it to see his mother as of yet.
This was just another by chance meeting.
Same exact day.
Good grief.
So I'm like, So we had exchanged numbers and everything while we were on the airplane. So fast forward the next morning, I call him. I just want to hear how his experiences was first day home, first day out.
First day out.
And when I called him the following morning, he said he had been throwing up. He was sick. The guys threw a party for him. He had, the alcohol, the weed, and he think his body just overreacted to all the drug use, and he still had not made it to see his mother. That was the sad part, Alex.
Did he get the pedicure yet?
I didn't even ask him about the pedicure. That's a good question. Did he get the pedicure?
I don't think so.
Probably not. Probably not. So,
wow.
That experience really led me to really think about friendships, and it led me to think about ecosystem and how this young man had been released from prison after 10 years, and his friends were there. And also thought about how he's most likely to return back to incarceration if his ecosystem is not changed.
Recidivism.
Yeah, we talk about recidivism.
Yeah.
We talk about re-entry. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes our systems and our policies have not been developed to really, truly have programs that's exploring the ecosystem. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think too the kind of, I don't think people think about drug use in that way. Really, I think it's really interesting because we're all in this space. We know what it takes to recover, right? We see the dimensions every single day, but who like a random person on the street who has no idea what this life is like, right? Who would connect the two, right? So, like diving deeper into that, why are friendships such a key a part of recovery? If you could delve into that.
Yeah, I think it's important in the book, The Recovery Ecosystem. I talk about protective factors. And I think as individuals, it's important. And I don't know when I started really thinking more about, or at least examining my so called friends. And that's what I had to do. And that was probably early 20s when I was on this self exploration path, this path of self awareness. And I realized I had to look at who I called my friends. And so when I say protective factors, I'm referring to individuals who inspire you, individuals who motivate you, individuals who are encouraging you, individuals who are saying, you can do this, y'all. You got this, Robert. And supporting you in a more positive way. You follow me?
Definitely.
And I think when I talk about ecosystem, I'm talking about variables that impact and influence our behavior. And our behaviors are often influenced by those who are in our lives. And if we have so-called friends in our lives that say, hey, let's just go and do a little vape and smoke a little weed and drink a little brew. Brew was old school.
Yeah, no, totally not. No, I'm not following
They
you.
don't even drink beer. Kids don't even drink beer.
We follow you.
You follow me? All right, you follow me. So, I think for me, it's really diving deeper to really help individuals understand the importance of everybody who's in your life is not always meant to be in your life for the right reason.
Yeah, I think it's important too because just when you were talking, it's an important conversation because I was thinking about like how I chose my friends when I was young. And I mean, like, how my definition was like, is this guy cool? Will us together be able to pull the girls? You know what I'm saying? It was based on like the craziest stuff. It wasn't based on anything with substance. Or was this person cool and will that make me look cooler? So this is an important discussion because you do need to kind of define like what you're looking for when you're looking for healthy friendships because when you're looking for those kind of things, inevitably what happened happened.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't have people that had my back at all.
Right,
You know.
right. Yeah, and healthy friendships, and thank you for sharing that because we really want to focus on, like why? Why do we have people in our lives that we feed off of that's not helping us to progress and move forward?
Mm-hmm.
So when we pull that layer back, we understand there's some underlying themes that contribute to that.
Yeah.
And what do you all think some of the underlying themes are?
Self-esteem. I gotta say, self-esteem. Even to this day, the external has always been easier than the internal. So when you speak about that gentleman who just got home from prison, you know, it's something that I can relate to too. And I appreciate that we're not judging him because we've all been there, right? When I was in jail, I could say, I'm never going to do this again. I had a structured environment. The ecosystem was regulated. There was drugs in there, but not too much as you would see in prison. And I've never been to prison, but all the intentions could leave within a minute stepping out of that door and depended on who I ran into. And so I think about what is that? And I got the external right because people gave me resources. I know where the meetings are. I know about nonprofits I could go to for help, but it was an internal self-esteem thing that I'm still looking for a quick fix, somebody to take the pain away in the shiny object. So I think a lot about self-esteem and what you said, Robert, about being a kid. I think I was still trying to make kids or friends in a very childish way, in a very youthful way, way too late, past the point where my brain should have been fully developed, but I was still a follower.
Yeah.
And so becoming a leader and being able to say no and to really listen and to build that internal sense of, is this really a healthy person? Because I just got out of jail and they're telling me that smoking a little weed is fine, while they know that that's going to lead me right back to where I am or I was. And so I had to take a really sharp look at that.
Yeah, yeah,
You
and
know?
thank you for jumping in and talking about that, Allison.
Mm-hmm.
Because definitely, the underlying themes are self-worth, it's self-esteem, it's low self-confidence, but also the humanistic side is we all want to be connected with each other.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be connected in the right way, and I think sometimes we've developed these negative patterns of connecting with the wrong people. Meaning, Allison, back during the early COVID-19 days, we met many times virtually for a number of years doing some statewide work involving reentry and recovery coaching, and she provided significant leadership over that endeavor, and we've just become good colleagues since. So really, really want to just applaud you and all the efforts you've done to ensure that Medicaid-assisted treatment are available for those who are incarcerated, both in county jails as well as prisons. Yeah, so today's focus, as Leo talked about, is healthy friendships. This is our very first episode of the Recovery Ecosystem podcast, and Leo has worked really behind the scenes in outlining a number of chapters that are really important, and these chapters coincide with the book, The Recovery Ecosystem. And so focusing on healthy friendships is always important. I always say if you have 9 broke people in your life, you're going to be the 10th broke person. But if you got 9 winners in your life, you're going to be the 10th winner. Mm-hmm. And I think we just got to really, really, really continuously to look at how ecosystems help individuals prosper. In my garden in the backyard, we have over about 30, 40 species of plants. And every day I walk in the backyard and look at these different plants. And, this past week we noticed the bleeding heart,
So pretty.
which is a very beautiful, beautiful plant. But what I find interesting is how we have these different species where the plants grow in different seasons. So some plants grow in April, some grow in May, some grow in June and July, etc. And so when I'm thinking about the ecosystem and I'm thinking about friendships, how do we help our friends grow? And what does that look like? How do we get people to see the unseen? Well, we have to talk about what superficial is, and we got to talk about what's not superficial, and we got to talk about the pros, the cons, and the benefits. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We all been through high school, and the thing that stood out to me the most in high school was the in crowd and the out crowd.
Yeah,
and
that's where it starts.
And what makes the in crowd in, and what makes the out crowd out.
Let me tell you.
Uh-oh.
Why was I hanging around people that my mom and dad said don't hang around, and the quote unquote healthy people said don't hang around? Because they gave me what I wanted when I needed it, and they were consistent, and they healed temporary pain.
Instant gratification.
Instant gratification. That is just the easy reason. I know it probably wasn't best for me. I know inside my heart I was going to do something wrong, but from a behavioral perspective, they're consistent, they have what they need, and they're going to fix my pain immediately. And so I had to learn that people telling me things I didn't want to hear didn't mean that they didn't love me or care for me. I needed to listen to those people. I was listening to people that were making me feel good, and they told me everything I wanted to hear to feed my addiction. And that's a positive reinforcement right there, because I'm going to come back. And so I had to learn that the people that really cared for me, sometimes are going to tell me what I don't want to hear. And those are the people that I need to listen to. Well, I think like Detroit Recovery Project and the peers and mentors are the best. Sometimes those are the best people for it, because I don't know if you're anything like me, but I was not into talking to my parents when I was a young kid, and so then the closest next thing was to talk to my quote unquote friends. Was like, okay, well, we can get rid of this, we can do this, and we can have fun, and screw families, screw parents. So I think having, something at Detroit Recovery Project with the youth or people that can really connect, where they can be honest, because looking at that reason why is really scary for people. Why am I doing this to myself? That answer can be frightening. Yeah. And a mom and dad or a guardian isn't always the trustworthy connect, you've got to talk to each other. We got to make this stuff cool that Andre has in his book, the Dr. Andre has in his book. We got to make this ecosystem for recovery the cool thing.
So, and that's why one of the parts I talked about when we talked about two components, one being the benefit. And I think one of the most important benefits is when you have healthy friendships, you receive unconditional love, respect. And I think that's what we're all looking for, because what happens is, so like if you take this mentality that you had in high school, it's just going to transfer into your adulthood. You'll be looking for the same things. But we can just cut out the middleman and say, okay, well, if you're looking for love and acceptance, unconditional, people that love you and like you unconditionally, you don't have to look for the cool kids for that. Because I think how this mentality happens in school is most of our parents they're caught up working and they're busy and they not, they trying to make it in life and take care of us. So we're searching for that connection, that unconditional love. But and well, if I get with the cool kids, more people will like me. But you could cut out the middleman. You can, you get with people that are real and more meaningful. And you can get that kind of love from, you don't have to be around the cool kids. And once again, that can transfer to when you're an adulthood. You don't have to, what's the coolest bar I can go to? Or, you know what I'm saying? This is a nice person at my job. Maybe me and this person can go bowling, or, if you're looking for unconditional love, because that's really what you're looking for. It's just we think it's in all of this other stuff, and that's one of the benefits, of having a healthy relationship, I believe.
And some people have never seen unconditional love. So like your book talks about trust, in gardening these healthy relationships, trust and I forget exactly the language that was used, but it was about also being flexible. Like we all have our pet peeves. So when you've never seen unconditional love and people are telling you like it's out here, it's kind of like never being on vacation to a foreign, island or something, and they're like, "Are you sure it's here? Can I be confident, Robert, in you that you're really going to meet me for coffee Saturday morning at 10 a.m. and you're going to be there the same way that the dope dealer was there to give me my fake unconditional love?" And it's like a learning thing. But if you can just trust a little bit, I'm telling you, these people in recovery have been where you are, will welcome you, and will feed you that unconditional love, and you'll be tight.
So tell me, how do you all describe unconditional love?
So for me, so we're talking about, so like, let me say what it's not, and then I'll tell you what it is. So, like I had a friend named Leon, right? And what I come to find out is he actually wasn't a friend. That's the guy that introduced me to crack cocaine. When I came home from the military, he was like, "Hey, this is what we doing now. We put it in the marijuana and we smoke it." And I'm calling this person my friend. This is not my friend. It's somebody that's trying to get me hooked. I got money coming home from the army, and so that's what I thought a friend was. But who was my real friend as I got in recovery and growing up, and I stopped just picking people like were cool people. I got this guy that we talk about unconditional love. We were really, really good friends. And this is like the type of person I probably would have never really hung around with. We went to broadcasting school together. And he's not like the coolest guy and dresses cool, but we have this connection of just like humor. And we text and talk all day about the craziest stuff. We talk about like stuff like who the director of the Three Stooges, just all kinds of just bizarre stuff. And he's not like the kind of person I would have normally hung around, but he's a real cool person. And he like loves me unconditionally, and I love him too unconditionally. We always even say that, "I love you, bro. Talk to you later." You know what I'm saying? So it was just like growing up and stop trying to choose people on, what they got or what they look like, and that's how you and really that's how you circumvent, you know.
Well, I think something that's hard to accept
Okay.
in terms of unconditional love. I think something that's hard to even digest is someone who is checking you, someone who says, "What are you doing?" or like who like, "Why are you doing this?" That's love.
Absolutely.
And it took me a long time to get to that, is like, that person who is going out of their way to make sure you are on your P's and Q's is the person you want around you,
Okay.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no doubt about
Yeah.
that. In fact, I was thinking about that earlier when we first started this conversation, because it took me a while, because I had thought that a friend would co-sign my BS, so to speak, and a true friend would say when you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
Um, and Robert, what he talked about, my train of thought I had lost was unconditional love involves people who genuinely care and are concerned about your well-being.
Nice.
And so I think if you got somebody who's, for example, coercing you to drink and drive, or say you can get away with it, or do something illegal or something that's not moral, those are the kind of people that you want to say, maybe I need to pump my brakes around, because this person can get me in some trouble, or perhaps get me involved in using substances and da 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 da. Usually all that stuff go together.
But when we talk about pumping the brakes too, I think this is a good point to delve into, is what does boundary setting in that way look like? I mean, once you're in that group, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to be like, oh, I need to step away if that's all you knew, So how do we navigate that? I think everybody has a different perspective on that.
Yeah, I think boundaries is really drawing that sand in the line. And sometimes you can't have those boundaries if you don't have a moral and value compass. Because the morals and the values compass helps us to it helps us to determine how we're going to navigate and how we're going to move. But if we're moving impulsively, or if we're moving based on instant gratification versus delayed gratification. So I think it's so much that can be unpacked there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In the 12 steps, they have 3 important, they call it the how: honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. And I like the list we're putting together. One is P's and Q's. Do they call you on your stuff? Are you, do you have people that's just organically are good people instead of what they have? And honesty is, because we're creating this list. When you're trying to have genuine people in your life, do you say, okay, am I honest? Is this a good person? And they don't try to get me to do stuff, or, they're not trying to influence me to be negative. Can you really take an honest assessment of that?
And sometimes you realize that after the fact. I think a lot of it is in reflection and learning from our past experiences and mistakes. And, and talking about boundaries, it's like there are times, Robert, like you said, you got to be really honest with yourself. What kind of boundary do I need to enforce here? Am I comfortable going to this restaurant kind of bar early on in recovery to Applebee's? Can I have a porous boundary here and just kind of like play it like, oh, we'll see what happens. Am I going to step into that space? Or coming out of jail, or prison? It's like, I would say then it's like, if there's any opportunity to use presented in front of me, it's over. So I think early on, like, it was a real struggle for me, and you kind of like took me, back to like 20, 23, 24 of like, you got to make new friends now, but your old friends are still like, wait, what? You're not coming to the game? You're not doing this? What's going on? And like, that's really hard. So I think like having somebody to talk to, at least one person to talk to about that, like, honestly, and to call and do something differently is a need right there.
Yeah.
And have more than one person. You don't need 100 friends. You don't need to be the most popular person in recovery, but if you got 2 or 3 people that you can call, and I don't even care, honestly, if people need to make up excuses like, oh, I can't come, I got sick, whatever it is. If that's your style in the beginning, we'll shape that up so you can just say, I don't do that anymore, and you can be comfortable being straight up about why you're not going to the bar. But whatever you need in the beginning, I know my boundaries had to be pretty tight.
Yeah, and also just being mindful that we some of us come from homes and environments of all we may have seen was toxic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important that we begin to really reflect on our upbringing, our families, because our families and our environments often influence us, and it also influences our paths and our behaviors. And that's why the Recovery Ecosystem book, we talk about the risk factors, and we talk about the protective risk factors, because when you begin to gain that insight and that self-awareness around what a healthy relationship is or is not. For example, if you grew up in a household where parents may have been physically or verbally or emotionally abusive, it's very normal for that child to begin to emulate what he or she had seen in growing up in that environment. And in order for him or her not to emulate that behavior, they have to have some new information or perhaps some examples of what a more healthy relationship may look like or what they may desire in order to begin to establish and build healthy relationships in the future. Because so much of who we are is also influenced by what we see, what we hear, what we feel.
Yeah.
And we're not always given the right tools to like really unpack it, process it, and really lean into it and embrace it so that we can ultimately be the better versions of ourselves. Because in order to have a healthy relationship, it has to start with self first.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where I like really, really appreciate the idea of harm reduction in this, because the healthy friendships are a huge part of harm reduction. So for just general, obviously we all know what harm reduction is, but just to generally speak, it's, a mentality of meeting people where they're at and helping them where they stand in terms of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that looks like, I feel like in a healthy friendship is that openness to say, you know what, I would, maybe someone who has never used drugs, right, would look at you and say, oh, I would rather you be sober, but I'm going to meet you where you're at right now. And like, at each point you're at in recovery,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still here for you and I'm still your friend.
And that is unconditional love right there. Because you're also not going to, forget where you came from because you've been that. And like something I like to remind myself is, and going back to the first story in your book, Dr. Johnson, with the gentleman on the plane, like the way that you connected with him, it might have not hit him in that moment, right? He, you saw him smoking weed after he got off the plane, and he might not be the all-star in recovery yet, but don't discount that those connections still matter, because I can tell you a number of people in my memory that I look back that I wish I could thank, thank you for saying, because I still remember I didn't hear you then, but I still take that with me. There's so many people, so it matters. Don't discount the way that you help people. And I do think harm reduction is we should add that to unconditional love. Yeah.
So we're about to wrap up this segment, but for the next segment, if we get a chance, I got a question. Do you guys think men and women can be friends?
Trust involves individuals being able, because we've talked about unconditional love, but how do we build trust? And trust is something that's built through our actions and interactions with each other, but is also built on some unspoken mutual respect for each other.
That's why I did this book.
And that's why the boundaries is so important, where I think and believe that we can have relationships with anybody if we're open to it. I had a very, very close friend of mine in my early sobriety days who maybe 5 years, actually it was 5+ years after I had known this individual, called me one day and said, I really got to talk to you. And I was like, okay, what's up? He was like, I'm gay. And I was like, okay, what's up? You know what I mean? Because we had established this bond early in recovery, right? And at this point, I really didn't care about, like I had a genuine love, care, and concern for this individual. And what his preference was totally irrelevant. I mean, this is the man who was instrumental in helping me get my first job, my first professional job. You know what I mean? And he vouched for me. He told his employer that I was the person to hire. And so when you have these moments and experiences, like I had 3 interviews for that job because the employer was a little hesitant because I had this colorful background and I had this youthfulness about me. And I knew as I began to kind of embark in that professional realm that I didn't want to let my friend down. You know what I mean? And I think that's when we start to develop care and concern for others and our interactions, because at the end of the day, no one's perfect, but at least we begin to embrace some new values. Mm-hmm. And those values are not embraced or based upon the external. It's the internal. It's connecting with the hearts. It's a lot of hearts that have to be healed. And that's why this recovery ecosystem is so important. We got to heal our hearts. And we can't heal our hearts unless we have some new information to put into our hearts.
Absolutely.
I think grief, loss, I just got a call earlier this week. A friend of mine's was in a really dark and sad space because, a young man he had been supporting for several months had got a hold to some cash. He relapsed and he died last week. Young man, right? Young Amir, may he rest in peace. Struggled. I mean, he was like in his late 20s.
Yeah.
His mom is heartbroken.
Yeah.
And so many people have been affected by that.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes that toxic stuff is internal.
Mm-hmm.
We got this toxic is also self-destructive.
Mm-hmm.
And we have these self-destructive patterns that we have to learn how to break.
Yeah.
But don't get me started. We're going to be dedicating one of our shows entirely to harm reduction moving forward.
Cool.
But keep doing the great work you're doing on the state level as it relates to, covering southeastern Michigan, Oakland County, Macomb County, Washtenaw County, Wayne County. She does, she has some big shoes to fill in terms of ensuring that. And just keep in mind, the one thing we didn't talk about, we'll have some data analysis type people on here since we have a social researcher and a newly young lady who's going to be attending Oxford University.
Wow.
So she'll be going back and forth to the UK, but she brings that policy and social research lens to really make sure that our conversation here is a fruitful conversation, but also educated and research-based, because we believe in research, we believe in evidence-based best practice, and we want to make sure that we equip our listeners with research and our experiences.
Yeah.
So again, I want to thank each and every one of you all for being on our show. We want to thank all the listeners. And again, the recovery ecosystem, a holistic approach to recovery, is also this show is being supported by the Detroit Recovery Project. Our website is www.recoveryfordetroit.com. That's www.recoveryfordetroit.com. And our phone number is 313-365-3100. That's 313-365-3100. We're recording live at 1121 East McNichols, Detroit, Michigan, 48203 at the Detroit Recovery Project. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a blessed day.
The Recovery Ecosystem Podcast is produced by Detroit Recovery Project, Incorporated. If you or someone you know needs support for substance use or mental health, call 313-365-3100 or visit recoveryfordetroit.com. You are not alone.